Is there a strategy that'll help you grow your company faster? CEO Sales Strategies is an investigative business podcast for entrepreneurial people who never stop asking questions. Highly acclaimed sales revenue growth expert Doug C. Brown interviews CEOs, business owners, and professionals who serve them to uncover and share actionable tips and methods behind their bulletproof sales strategies. Topics covered on the show include their failures, struggles, secrets, and processes that help them succeed in selling millions to billions of dollars of their products and services, all with the sole aim of helping you grow your business. If you are eager to know the most effective sales secrets from the A players of the game, then the CEO Sales Strategies podcast is certainly the place to be.
Hey, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies podcast, bringing you another amazing guest. His name is Mr. Pat Helmers, Helmers. And Pat and I discuss a lot on how to use content to leverage, because content now is providing people the ability to make decisions before they even talk to you about sales, what you're selling, right? So it's how to not commoditize yourself and how to stand out in the crowd and get yourself in the public square using content, and really how simple it is to do this and why people aren't doing this, primarily because they know they should be doing this, but they don't know how simple it is. So Pat and I break it right down to the very step-by-step process. Let's go talk to Pat right now. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this. Here we go. Hey, Pat, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
Doug, I am honored to visit you guys today. Thank you very much for having me.
Well, I'm really excited actually to talk about our subject matter that you and I discussed, which was content creation and how to leverage it. And, using it pre-sales, during sales, et cetera, et cetera. So why don't you tell everybody what you consider content creation so everybody's on the same page?
Well, content creation is actually, it's in that marketing space, right? It's things that you say, that you share with the world, that differentiates you from everybody else out there. It's I guess it's essentially your brand. And I think a lot of people forget that. It's certainly in the context of building tweets, Instagram posts on LinkedIn, podcasting, which is something that I've been a big part of. Those are all kind of like tactics around it. But content creation is really about a strategy about, building written word or media, that represents your brand.
Yeah. And why is it so important that people see that now? Because years ago we'd see billboards with the Marlboro Man on it or whatever, right? Or we'd see something on television, or maybe it'd be a local advertisement or a newspaper or magazine. But why is it more important now today? Let's say in almost 23. Is it more important today than it ever was? I believe it is. I hope you do too, because I'm putting myself in a position where you shoot me right down. But the reality is, why do you think it's so important today in 2023 to do it?
I think it's just because the competition is just so tough. There's so much competition out there. You're just not competing with somebody on the other side of town or somebody within your state. You're competing with people all around the world, all across your nation. And a lot of stuff from a buyer's point of view looks like a commodity. And it's hard for people to differentiate you from something else. So you've got to stand out. And content marketing is one of the primary ways that people do that these days.
So there's a couple of points here, like competition. As soon as you said it, I was like, wow, you know what? We are worldwide now. It's not just, hey, we're in the United States.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the second thing that hit me was, it's so inexpensive now for competitors. They actually do it because they can do it for free in many cases, and they certainly do it for lower costs. So it kind of levels the playing field of, back when I was growing up, if you wanted to throw a full page news ad in, say, the New York Times, well, it cost a few, tens of thousands, if not more, of dollars to actually do that for one ad, right? But now for tens of thousands of dollars, wow. You can create all kinds of stuff and proliferate the internet if you really knew what you were doing for, $30,000, $40,000 compared to one ad, right? It's no longer the bigger companies can do this and the smaller companies can't compete. And so that, I think, adds to the proliferation. And I love what you said, though. In the buyer's mind or in the buyer's view, you're a commodity if you're not there. Let's go there, because I don't think people really realize that that's what's happening.
Well, it's understandable too, because I love my children. I think my babies are beautiful. I put my whole life into them, right? I can't help but think, well, why wouldn't somebody want to love this baby and want to buy this baby?
Right.
But from the buyer's point of view, every baby looks like a golf ball, and all golf balls are white and round, and they all kind of look alike. Buyers got real problems and challenges and aspirations. We talk about pain, but they've also got hopes and dreams. And unless something that you build or provide or a service, unless it solves something that they have a desire for, they're not going to be interested. And it's got to look different it's got to speak to that buyer. It's got to speak to them in their context, not just in the context of you as the person who's had this baby. I don't know, maybe I'm overdoing this metaphor.
No, I think it's a really good point, because we all we all look at children in general, certainly our own, right? And we all look at them and we go, wow, that's,
they're so beautiful.
yeah.
Oh,
And
lovely,
in most children, we do look at that way, but other people look at the child and go, oh my God, that thing will throw up on me, right? I mean, but when it comes to the buyer's context, if we all look like the same zebra in the herd, so to speak, we all have stripes and we look that way, how do they pick us out, right? So, and like you said, they have problems, they want resolutions, they have opportunities, they want to capitalize on that. So we, prior to ever even talking to them now, we can position that way easier than ever before. And that's where I think content really comes in and shines, because we can put forth some type of understanding that puts us now on a buyer coming inbound to us versus us having to go outbound is a very different position.
Right. I agree.
So how do you leverage content then? Let's say somebody goes, okay, Pat, you convinced me already, right? How do you leverage content to put yourself into the public square, so to speak, to position yourself the right way to kind of beat out the competition, or at least put yourself in a place where you're in the top 5?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think this is a step that a lot of people forget. A lot of people will know that they need to tweet a lot or put a lot of Instagram posts out there, or post on LinkedIn a few times a week and things like that. They know that, but what to put in there, that's where people struggle.
Yep.
And the best way of knowing what to say is to truly understand your ideal client and the problems and the desires that they really have. And one of the best way of doing that is to interview them, or to do some kind of research study. What are the top 3 problems that you're challenged with? What are the top 3 desires that you hope to have? What are 3 things that you wish people could take from their business and just make it go away? Just poof, make it disappear. What are those things? And if you talk to enough people, and it doesn't need to be very many, 20, 30, what does statisticians say, 50 to make it statistically significant? You'll get a pretty strong idea of what people are struggling with. And if you're interviewing them with open-ended questions, they'll tell you exactly the words to say. They'll say, I can't believe this is happening. It keeps, it gives me indigestion every morning at breakfast. Something like that. So that when you write content, you write, do you have indigestion every morning before you go to work? People will go, that's me. I have that problem. And if they think you understand what their problems are, then they'll make an assumption that you have the solutions for them too.
Right. And I think you said something so key, and it drives me crazy because people do this all the time. Oh, they don't do the research, right? That drives me insane. And it's like, well, I got a problem. I can't, this person's not talking to me, or this company won't talk to me. And I'm like, do they want to? Right. Like, what's the compelling reason they want to talk with you? Well, I want to talk with them. Sorry, that's not good enough. That's like walking up to a beautiful lady at the bar and going, hey, I want to talk to you. And she goes, get lost, loser. Right. That type of thing. But if you knew what her opportunities or challenges were, and she was talking, well, I'll give you an example. So my friend Tim and I were down at where were we? In Florida, right? And we were at a place, and Tim was with his girlfriend, and I heard two gals talking, and they were both very attractive, and I was single at the time. And so we're there, and they're talking about Connecticut and where they're from in Connecticut, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And Tim and I grew up together, so we've been very competitive our whole lives. So I go up to Tim and I go, I'm sitting down at the table. I go, I bet you I can tell you who is in this room and what state they're from. And he goes, no, you can't. I said, I bet I can. I said, look at those two girls over there. I bet you I can tell you exactly where they're from. I'll study them and I'll tell you in one moment. And he goes, no, you can't do it. I said, $50. He goes, $50, huh? And I said, yeah, $50. He goes, okay, you're on. He pulls out $50, throws it on the table. I throw it on the table with him. And I go, hold on. And I do my little Houdini like looking thing, right? And I'm pretending I know. And I said, Connecticut. They're Tim. They're from Connecticut. Hold on. Let me give you their industry maybe they work in. And I start going the Houdini thing again. I go, Tim, I think it has something to do with automotive. I'm getting a little fuzzy thing. And he goes, you're full of it. I'm like, well, it's $50. Why don't you go ask him? He walks over and he goes, hey, I just wanted to know, are you from Connecticut and work in the automotive industry? And they go, yes, by the way, we are, right? Well, so I walk, he gives me the money. He's like, you rat, right? So I walk over and I go, hey, you're from Connecticut in the automotive industry. Yeah. Is this happening in the automotive industry? It's all the stuff I heard them say. And they go, yeah. And they go, pull up a chair. Let's talk, right? And so my point to everybody is not that I'm so smart or devious, if you will, in the case where, Tim, if you're listening to this, haha, I got you $50. But what you said is so critical. If you understand what they want, what they don't want, number one, and as important equally is you use the same language patterns they're using in that particular ad or social media piece or whatever, it's like they know you forever. And Pat, why don't people do this more often? I don't understand. It's so easy.
Well, you listened, right? Why do you think? What is it that doesn't make people want to listen? People want to tell. People have this like bizarre idea that sales is about telling people about their crap, and trying to force it and shove it on people. But in reality, it's great marketing, great sales. It's really about, like you said, you just sat there and you listened. You eavesdropped.
Right.
You eavesdropped. And it was profitable for you, wasn't it?
Oh, it was a big time. We hung out for a couple of days, and we were really, we were friends. I mean, by the end of the couple of days, we were really good. It turned out that they lived not too far from where Tim lives. So every time I go out and see him, I could say, hi,
How's the ladies doing?
Right. So, but it's just like,
yeah, people,
for some reason, they make this so much more difficult than it is. And I think you like nail on the, a hammer on the head of the nail, right? They don't know what to say. They know they need to do it. That's one problem, getting them to do that. But the second thing is they don't know what they need to say. And what you're doing is giving the formula.
Yeah, but it kind of goes back to what you said. You said you did this Houdini kind of thing that kind of gave your friend a sense that you're mind reading somehow. It's right. Coming through the ether, right? People think that somehow that's going to work. That you can't read people's minds, but you can know what they're thinking if you ask them. Sir, what's the biggest challenge you're facing this week right now in your business? What are you putting all your efforts on right now this week? Gosh, that's got to feel terrible having that challenge. That's got to be annoying. And I think I have something that can help that. I'm not sure if it's a good fit or not. Would you be interested in hearing what I'm going to tell you what I have? And they're going to say, well, sure, I would love to see that.
Right.
And I haven't told them anything about what I have yet. What I have told them is I care about them. I listened to them. I repeated back what I heard from them.
Pat, this sounds also like basic, right? I mean, isn't there secret sauce to this whole thing? Like, don't I have to do a triple blind study or whatever? I mean, come on, it can't be this easy, is it? I know I'm being facetious, but the reality is it's not that much more.
It's not hard. And the thing is, it's very easy. I think a lot of people have hesitancy about talking to people they don't know. They don't have strangers. We're told that don't talk to strangers when we were kids, and people have a tendency to still keep that as adults. So, but it's not hard to step up to a stranger and say, I see that you're in this industry. I'm doing a market research study. I wonder if I could ask you 2 or 3 questions. What's your biggest challenge? What are your biggest aspirations for the next 5 years? Where do you think the industry's going? Something like that. And then when they tell you the answer, you go, thank you very much. And you move on.
Right.
And you do that to 20, 30 people. Then you factor out all the commonalities. You'll know exactly what to say. You can actually go back to them probably a month later and say, I heard you said that you have this problem, and this other thing, right? Yeah. I think I might be able to help you. Would you like to see what we have? And they'll say, yeah. And if you put that in marketing content, you put that in a LinkedIn post, in an Instagram post, on a tweet, on a Facebook, you create a Facebook ad, a Google ad, and you use those exact same words that they used. You heard people say over and over. That's the trick. The trick is just to tell people what they already know. The trick is not to like convince them that you're better than anybody. It's to show that you understand them, and then they'll be interested in you.
Right. It's building a relationship right from the beginning.
Yeah.
Right? You're getting commonality.
Not transactional. There's way too much transactionalism in the world. Way too much of it. And that's what people hate about sales. And you can't really do that hardly as much anymore because of the internet.
Right.
Because there's so much more opportunity. It goes back. There's so much competition. If everything looks the same, then I'm just gonna make a decision based on price.
Right. I agree with you. I think the second component for people, like if they're looking for the second part of that formula, is when you recognize what those problems are, go be an expert on what those problems or opportunities are. Because I've done the same thing you're saying, and it works every time, right? And just interview these people, ask them questions, and a lot of times you get their contact information in the process of doing that. So what I've done is I take, because all these things will start to overlap. Right. If we do enough of them, like let's say 50, right? The magic statistical number, it's not that high. You and I both know it's 20 or 30.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Because
you could do 10 sometimes.
Exactly. Because you start to hear the same things over and over again. So you take those same things and put them into the top 5 or the top 10, then just come up with some answers and create a little report, if you will. And you call them back and you go, hey, Pat, I don't know if you remember me or not. We talked, 6 weeks ago, or whatever. And I've been doing my research and I came up with the findings. Can I share them with you? And
yeah,
it's crazy. You just send out, you just set up a little 20-minute conversation, pull your report up and say, I have this report, this is what's there. And you have this conversation. And then it amazes me to this day that people go, geez, you want another appointment?
I'm doing that right now. Right now, we did a market research project last spring on an IoT device for manufacturing. We just asked them open-ended questions like that. We actually built something over the summer. We have something we want to show them. And how am I following up? Doug, remember last spring when I came and I did some market research on you, asked you a bunch of questions? We have done that study as I promised. And I promised you that I'd bring back their findings and some of the things that we're doing to address that. Would you be interested in meeting with me again so I could show you what we're doing? And they're like, sure. Makes logical sense to them, right?
No, I mean, to get 20 or 30 decent appointments, right? No, I'd rather make 100 phone calls a day and try to persuade somebody and interrupt them and have people hang up on me. No. So he's working too hard. So we can use content for that positioning tool to actually put us on an expert status. So now they actually want to talk to us.
That's like you said. Let's say we see 5 issues that people have all the time. 5 things people in your industry struggle with. The 5 solutions people in your industry always are looking for or aspiring to have. And if you write a blog post on that, SEO the death out of that. When you send those people emails, say, hey, I just wrote a blog post about this. You might find interesting. You put that on LinkedIn and then reuse it over and over and over,
right.
Make it a tweet, make it an Instagram post.
You could even take those five things and break them down and do YouTube shorts on them, right? You could just do a one.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, these one minute little videos on there, and I know people who are killing it with TikTok, and they're not dancing like kids. They're actually creating real content, right?
It's funny you bring that up because, my daughters are 21 and 23, and we were talking about TikTok because TikTok's starting to eat what's now called Meta, right? Was Facebook. They're taking a lot of their clientele off of Facebook, and they're all starting to go toward TikTok. Not all, but many of them going toward TikTok, right? So I was talking to them about us doing the business side on TikTok. They're like, and so they're telling me what to do, what not to do, right? So I'm talking to the kids because they're watching this all the time. And I'm like, does dad got to put on a dress and jump out there and do all this stuff, dancing around, right? And they're like, no, dad, no. So the reality is that we can leverage these platforms for very cost-effective amounts of time, energy, and money, or we can work the hard way, really, when it comes down to it. And I love the fact that you're just saying how simple this is, right? People are trying to create this magic hot sauce or something, the triple flying dragon kick of content. And it's like, no, Bruce Lee never throw that. If he did, it was always practice because he'd probably get knocked down in a fight, right? So, but you've been using content. Oh, by the way, I didn't plug it. We're speaking of Mr. Pat Helmers. Pat has a company called salesbabble.com. That is one of the companies. And I know you're using content now, like in the form of a podcast. You got a new podcast out. And I remember us talking about, you were saying you had a cannabis podcast out right now, but it's also creating, and you're leveraging that to get now other B2B opportunities through the podcast. What's the podcast name, if you don't mind me asking?
It's a Cannabis Advocate.
Cannabis Advocate?
Advocate.
Okay.
Advocating for cannabis.
Okay,
cannabis.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so how is that content from cannabis? How is it getting the B2B? I mean, that seems like if a person thinks about that, it's like, well, it's a little risky, isn't it, to try to get a B2B appointment, but it seems to be working out pretty well for you.
Yeah. What's great about the podcast is, and it's a B2B podcast, actually, it's about people in the industry, and cannabis is a weird business, as probably everybody knows. It's been federally illegal. It's slowly being legalized in states. So it's got issues with banking, and there's all kinds of problems in it. What's been terrific about this podcast is that it's given me an opportunity to interview practically anybody I want in the podcast, in the industry. People very, very high up, people very, very low down. So I can I have been able to learn this industry extremely fast by talking to experts in the industry, and they're very quick to introduce me to other people. And I've been able to build a network extremely quickly. And I've been doing it for about a year. And that's what I've really enjoyed about the podcast. So with that, from that, then I can get consulting. I can get consulting work. And that's been really terrific. And I do a lot of matchmaking too, for profit. And that's been kind of fun. Like today, I just applied for a press pass for a conference, which is one of the largest conferences in the world on cannabis, and they immediately gave it to me because I have a podcast. So what could have been $1,000 for a ticket to this conference is free.
Right.
And usually press passes, they give you all kinds of VIP kinds of places that you can go to where people are doing networking and whatnot. It's a great opportunity for me to walk the trade show floor and to meet people and to shake hands and to get them to understand me, get them to maybe sponsor my podcast. There's all kinds of opportunities with that. I've done that in my sales podcast a number of times. I've had sponsors on there for quite a long time. It's a pretty cool way. That's what I like about podcasting, and it's something that is that can be multi-purpose too. Every podcast has a blog. The blog can be SEO'd. The blogs and the podcasts or promoter in all the different social media networks. I try to repurpose content over and over and over again.
I love podcasting. And as we discussed, I never started this podcast to have like be a podcaster, right? I mean, it just kind of took, and then all of a sudden it's like people are calling me and things are happening. So it's kind of like, the musician, if you will, that got out there just to play out in the clubs, and all of a sudden he got discovered. And my podcast went to the top third of podcasts pretty quickly because I brought people like yourself on who actually told the real story, the real truth, right? Mm-hmm. But what I've learned through podcasting is exactly what you said, is you can take that podcast and now you don't have to think so much about the content that you're creating because it's targeted on a specific subject, and we can just pull the content out, which we do, and we spin it in multiple different ways. And that kind of proliferates out, and it's a heck of a lot easier to do it that way, Pat, because to me, it's like, all right, you do it once and now you have 7, 8, 9 different ways to actually put that out there. But what's interesting to me about the cannabis podcast is it is so, like, to an average person, they wouldn't think, my God, it has nothing to do with sales, right? I mean, we all know there's a lot of money coming in on cannabis.
Oh yeah.
But it really, like, it's for the sales babble, it's like, it just has nothing. What does that have to do with consulting, right? But the fact that you're out there and you're able to have conversations on and around business issues is putting you out there, and the podcast is positioning you as an expert. And the fact you got a press pass, that's even position you as an expert in that as well. So, a lot of times I have conversations with people and they're like, well, why would I put this kind of content out? It has no relevance to my audience, right? Using humor or something for the day. And they don't realize that people are so stressed out that something that makes them laugh could actually attract them. And so what would you recommend to people if they're like, all right, you know what? I want to start a podcast, but should I do it on the industry specific, or should I do it on a cross industry, or how do I get the content? There's 2 different questions, but what would you recommend?
I would look, let's say you're in marketing sales, and I would look at who's your ideal client. What's your value proposition? Who are the people most likely to buy your products? And then if you factor out, if you build an avatar around those people, then this is an opportunity for you to do that market research that we were talking about. But you'd be doing it through a podcast. What are the things that you're struggling with? Or maybe you already know what the things you're struggling with, and you would interview them on the podcast about how they've addressed that struggle. So it wouldn't be about your business necessarily. It'd be about the things that your ideal clients care about. So this gives you an opportunity to have a conversation with anybody you want in the C-suite, people that are really hard to get a hold of, people who don't pick up their phones, who aren't on LinkedIn often, who don't read any email you send them goes to spam. Here's an opportunity for you to get in front of them. And the way they're looking at it is, oh, I'm creating content to promote my business or my brand, my personal brand as an executive, because I'm always looking for the next gig myself too, move from company to company.
Right.
And so it's a win-win in that regards. So you would interview them on the problems that they have, which may have nothing to do with your business. But at the end of every interview, you would go, they're invariably going to say, well, what do you do, Doug? What do you do in your business? And you go, oh, I do consulting for people in your industry, or I sell a product or a service for people in your industry. And they're going to go, well, really? Tell me more about that. Well, maybe we should have a sales call on that. You got your calendar? Let's set up an appointment right now. Right? And now you have an in with this person because you've built a relationship with them. You're not treating this as transactional. You've actually been here doing like what we're doing right now, for a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour. And they're gonna be more than happy to say, well, I think I would like to hear about you. I'm going to bring some people in for that call. Would that be okay? It'd be awesome.
Now, the one caveat I will tell people if they're new, do not start a podcast just to get your ideal clients on that podcast to try to pitch them.
Oh, no.
Right? Because
no.
a lot of podcasts teachers out there are doing that. They're saying, well, this is great to get your ideal prospect on the podcast. Now, if you do that and they perceive it as a bait and switch, you're going to completely break rapport.
Really? There's people teach. I haven't heard this.
Oh my gosh, Pat, it drives me crazy.
It's a horrible idea.
It drives me insane because
you have to totally live in a life of integrity, especially in these times of the internet, because bad news gets out fast.
Oh yeah.
No, I wouldn't do that. But this is I have sold all kinds of stuff in my life that I'm not an expert on. I'm not. But if you're in it, if you're selling it long enough, you talk to people long enough, before you know it, people think that, oh, you've been in this industry for years. You totally understand what's going on. You know who all the important people are, what the hot buttons are, and all that. Like, no, you just pick it up through word of mouth. That's what a podcast can do. And it can make it easy for you to be very, very conversant in that industry and become an expert in the industry, even though you're not from that industry.
Right. And as you said, all you have to do is go out and interview people that are potential targets and ask them, what are they looking for? What are the pains? What are the opportunities? What's, all of that. Just like we started in the beginning of this podcast. One thing I learned from the CEO Sales Strategies podcast, which I had a suspicion, but I had no confirmation. Almost every CEO that I've ever talked with that has had a substantial size company have said the same thing. And I write this down, folks, because if you're selling to C-level side, we don't want to be sold to, we want to buy.
Yeah.
That's they say that every single time that question comes up. How do you want to be sold to? They go, I don't want to be sold to, I want to buy. And so part of creating content is allowing them to get that information so that they can buy, versus, walking into a store and then having a sales team just maul them. They walk into whatever, commission-based, appliance company or something, and, or furniture stores. Those are, to me, those are worse today than ever before, because they walk right up to you and they go, hey, how you doing today? It's like, oh my gosh, no. Worst line in the world, right? So because they're just on full commission, they just want to sell you something. That's fine, but they're positioning that way. Versus getting to know, what are you really looking for? What do you, here in the store for? How do you like to be interacting with people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And by the way, furniture industry, all you have to do is ask potential customers. They'll tell you this stuff, just like Pat is saying to do. So, Pat, anything you want to say to the audience? Something we didn't, put forth? I know we could talk all day long, and I know you've got other things to do as well. So,
I do. I really want everybody who's listening to this podcast to get it in their heads that you are there to serve them and to help them. That's what people want. It's like what you said. They want to buy. People are skeptical about sellers, but deep down, secretly, they wish they could buy a solution from you that would take their problems away. Deep down, that's really, really want. They actually want to buy. If you make it seem like, if you make it easy for them, if you can really give them value, they're going to want to buy. If people aren't buying, if you're doing all this right, and you truly understand what they want and what their problems are, what their aspirations are, and they're still not buying, you may have a problem with your product or service. It may not be about sales. I have been in that space where I've been able to sell all kinds of people and get it almost to the finish line, but not be able to cross it because I didn't have what they want.
Right.
But that's another great thing about this kind of selling, is that they'll tell you exactly what's wrong with it, and then you can go back to product development, tell them this is what we need. This is the thing that's stopping us. This is the thing that's holding us back. So the customer has all the answers. You just got to ask them. That's the bottom line here. That's the takeaway.
I think that's very wise advice. In most industries, I think the SaaS industry in general follows that, because they're constantly, starting a beta group and doing that and keeping with them. But
that's where I come from. That's where I come
that's
from.
Why.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But a lot of other industries don't do that. They take it for granted. And then what ends up happening is something happens. Like the recession's coming in now. It's going to change how people do business. It's that simple, right? And times are easy, times are good. In certain industries, when the recession wasn't there, now it's going to get a lot more real to have to do what we're talking about doing. Otherwise, they're going to find themselves in positions where, not selling what we're supposed to be selling, and look at the numbers and all that stuff. So, Pat, I really appreciate you being here. This was an awesome conversation. I enjoyed it very much. How do people get a hold of you if they so desire?
It'd be great if they've listened to the podcast, salesbabble.com. We've been podcasting for many, many, many years. A lot of great content out there. We talk about this very thing all the time in a fun way. That's an easy way. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm easy peasy to find on LinkedIn. Pat Helmers, on LinkedIn. I also have a company called Habanero Media. We help people start podcasts, and we do this very same thing using podcasts to improve your sales and marketing. That's the whole thing of that. If they want to look at habaneromedia.net, they can find that. I'm assuming you got show notes, right, Doug?
Oh yeah, we'll put them in the show notes.
We'll just stick it there. People don't remember.
Yeah, but I'm making you work, brother. That's what it is.
Yeah, they don't need to memorize all this. They can look it up in the show notes, or just Google me, Pat Helmers. I'm easy peasy to find.
Awesome. Well, Pat, once again, thanks for being on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I'm very grateful you're here.
Oh, this is a super duper honor. This has been fun. This is a great conversation. We can talk about this all day.
All right. What did you learn? Well, maybe you learned that this is not that hard to do and that you can do it. Here's a key though. You've got to schedule time to do it. If you just make this kind of like, I'll do it whenever, then what's going to happen is whenever is going to be probably not ever or erratic, right? So consistency in this content delivery is important. And I never realized how important it was until I stopped for a little bit. So, I was doing it, YouTube, blogging, putting out all kinds of things, right? Just on a consistent basis, not overwhelming to do it, but just putting out on a consistent basis. Then I took a couple of weeks off, and I actually got people coming to me and saying, hey, where are you? Why don't I have this content? I rely upon this. And I'm like, who are these people, right? Because I didn't know that they were following me. So you will get followers if you do this for a long enough period of time. Those followers actually turned into clients. So please don't discount what Pat and I are telling you on this content strategy. Today, you've got to be out in the public square more than ever, and you've got to get heard because there's so many people, as he said, worldwide competing with you today. And depending on what you do, generally, it can be delivered on a worldwide basis. Or certainly on a nationwide basis, right? I'll give you an example. Right now in our office, we have a little more noise coming through on the office because it's close enough to the highway that I'm hearing some highway noise come in. And I want to solve that problem. So I'm calling around locally and people are like, I don't know how to solve that problem. Like, do I get storm windows on the window? What do I do? Right. And then there's a couple of specialty companies that actually make inserts for an interior window. So you put a window right before your interior window, and that blocks pretty much all the sound that would be coming through. Sounds great. By the way, they're not cheap. They're actually kind of on the opposite end of cheap to be able to do that. But here's the key. Okay. I'm in New Hampshire. One of these companies I was talking with is in Florida. One of these companies I'm talking with is in Seattle, Washington, or Portland, Oregon area. Right? That's a long distance away. And they are competing with the local glass companies now in order to do the same thing. Because actually they're specializing in certain things that the local glass companies won't even do. But they are still competing with them because the local glass companies are like, hey, we'll switch out your window. We'll put new windows in. And I already know putting a triple pane glass versus double pane glass is not going to reduce the sound that much. So it's not really the ideal solution. But these people have the ideal solution. So they are competing with them. And how did I find them? You get it. Content. That's how I found them. So people will go up and they'll search content first today. And then when you're positioned as the expert on that content, they will be connecting with you. As always, if you like the subject matter and you want to hear a different subject matter or even more on this subject matter, reach out to us and let us know. If you happen to be an expert in that particular subject matter and you want the opportunity to be on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast, reach out to us at YouMatter, YOUMATTER, at CEOSalesStrategies.com. If you like this podcast, please review it. If you love this podcast, give it a 5-star review. I'd really be appreciative. I know it takes 5 minutes to do that. 5 minutes well spent, making a good friend, me. So if you wouldn't mind doing it, I would appreciate it. Tell your friends, tell people about this. The more people that hear this, the more people that actually get helped. That's why this podcast was started in the beginning, was just to help people, bringing real people, real content, real deliverable stuff that they can actionally, use. So it's actionable, right? If you or someone you know, or someone on your team or your sales team wants to get to the top 1% earners in what you're selling, right? You could be a solo entrepreneur all the way from a, 200 person, 300 person sales team. If you want your people to be there or yourself to be there, and you want help in doing that and understanding the process to it, let me know. If you're a company and you're looking for these 1% earners that have been fully trained and fully deployed, reach out to us. Either way, at Doug@CEOSalesStrategies.com is the email. My LinkedIn is Doug Brown 1234, DOUGBROWN 123. Sorry, no 4 at the end. And the phone number here is 603-595-0303. So this is Doug C. Brown saying, please go out and sell something, sell it profitably, sell a lot of it, play win-win, help people, make them happy, make yourself happy. It makes the world a better place through selling. Until next time, Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategy signing off. To your success.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. What is something that you learned that you could act on today? Don't forget to schedule it now, or it may never get forward momentum. If you find our content valuable, please leave a favorable review and let us know what you liked. Please also share this with others if the content will help them. For our show notes, other episodes, and more interesting content and resources, please visit CEOSalesStrategiespodcast.com. See you soon, and to your continued success.